My son David turned 50 in 2017, the same year his mother died. That year took something from both of us that we've never fully talked about. And I've been thinking, for a while now, about everything I wish I'd said to him that year. And in the years just before it, when he was standing exactly where a man stands at 50, right in the middle of everything, still building, already beginning to count the cost. I'm 82 years old. My name is Walter. David is 58 now. And what I want to tell you today is what I wish I'd said to my son when he was 50. The things that were true and waiting to be said. The things I had available to me at 73 that I didn't hand over when I should have. Some of this I've told him since, slowly, imperfectly, over Sunday phone calls that have gotten more honest as the years went by. But some of it I held too long, and I want to set it down now. Not for David exactly, though he'll hear it if he finds his way to this, but for the person who is 50 now, or close to it, or who loves someone who is. For the person standing where David stood in 2017, in the middle of everything, still building, already counting the cost. The first thing I wish I'd told him is this: the work is not going to remember you, but the people will. David was, at 50, working harder than I had worked at his age. He's an engineer. He'd been at the same firm for about 20 years by then. He was doing well. I knew that in the external sense, the career sense, the sense that came through in the Sunday calls. But I also knew, because I recognized it, that the work had the kind of hold on him that it had once had on me. The kind where it's not just what you do, but who you are. Where the work and the self have gotten mixed up in a way that feels like strength and is actually something more complicated. I knew it because I'd been there. I'd lived the version of that story where the work takes the center and everything else orbits it. And I knew, at 73, something I hadn't known at 50. What happens when the work ends? It ends. Eventually, it always ends. The business closes, or you retire, or your body tells you enough and you step back. And when it ends, you find out what was actually there. Not what you built in the work that stays, in houses and projects and things that have your hands in them, but what was built in the life around the work, in the marriage, in the children, in the friendships, in the 100 small daily choices about where your attention went when the work wasn't making all the demands. Those things either held or they didn't, and you find out when the work ends, which it was. I wish I'd told David at 50, son, the work will not remember you when it's over. It will go on with someone else, or it will simply be finished, and the firm will exist or not exist, and the projects will be completed or not completed, and the work will have nothing to say about you. But the people will. The people who had you or didn't have you in the years when you were giving most of yourself to the work. They will have something to say, and what they'll say will depend almost entirely on choices you're still in a position to make right now. I should have said that more plainly. I skirted it on the Sunday calls. I made observations about spending time with the children, about calling Karen when he was tired. I didn't say the thing underneath those observations, which was, son, I know where this goes, because I went there and I want you to take a different road while the fork is still visible. Let me tell you what I saw in David at 50 that I recognized because I'd been at the same age. He was, in 2017, the kind of man who answered work questions at supper time. Not dramatically. He wasn't the man with the phone always visible, making the family feel secondary. It was subtler than that. It was in the quality of his listening, the way he'd be present in a conversation and then not quite present, his attention making a small excursion somewhere else and then returning, the particular way he'd say something has come up at work when Karen asked why he was distracted, as if the explanation was sufficient, as if the name of the cause ended the obligation to be present despite it. I recognized it because I'd said exactly those words to Helen for most of 2 decades. Something has come up at the shop, something that needed doing, something that, in retrospect, almost always had a version that didn't require me to be only approximately present at the dinner table, but that I treated as requiring exactly that. The work doesn't make you absent. You make yourself absent, and you give the work the credit. That's what I wish I'd said. Not as a criticism. I wasn't criticizing David, any more than I was criticizing myself, but as something I understood clearly at 73, that neither of us had understood at 50. That the presence you give away to the work doesn't come back. The supper time you are approximately there for, your children experience as approximately yours. And approximately is over years, a significant distance. Not unloving, not uncaring. Approximate, the people in your life can feel the difference between full presence and approximate presence. They may not name it, they may not say anything about it, but they feel it the way you feel the difference between a joint that fits precisely and one that fits approximately. Approximately functional, approximately there. The house stands, but there's a gap. I built houses for 45 years. I know what approximate does to a structure over time. I should have told David, son, give them precise. Not every moment. You can't sustain precise every moment. Nobody can. But enough moments, more than I gave. Enough that your children grow up knowing the difference between the approximate version of you and the actual one, because they've met the actual one enough times to recognize it. David is a precise man. He gets it from me, partly, the carpenter's training, the attention to what fits and what doesn't, the intolerance for things being approximately right when they could be exactly right. And he's right about things, often, more often than not. He has a good mind and he uses it carefully, and his assessments of situations tend to be accurate. What I should have told him at 50 is that being right is not the same as being understood, and that being understood matters in ways that being right doesn't fully replace. I learned this in my marriage. Helen and I had a particular dynamic for the first 30 years of our life together, where I was often right about the practical things, about how a situation was likely to unfold, about what the sensible course of action was, and where my being right created a kind of distance between us that took me years to understand. Being right, delivered without care for how it lands, communicates something beyond the correct information. It communicates, I have already figured out what you haven't figured out yet. It establishes a hierarchy, a gap, between the person who knows and the person who is still catching up. Helen didn't need me to figure things out for her. She needed me to figure things out with her. The difference between the two is enormous, and I was in my 50s before I understood it, and in my 60s before I regularly practiced it. I wish I'd handed David that understanding at 50, before whatever version of it he had to learn the hard way. I wish I'd said, son, the precision that makes you good at the work will work against you in the relationships, if you're not careful. In the work, being right efficiently is the goal. In a marriage, in a family, the goal is something different. The goal is finding the right answer together. And finding it together is always slower and messier and less efficient than just being right. But it's the only kind of finding that builds anything lasting. The third thing I wish I'd told him is that 50 is not the middle. He said it at some point around that birthday. 50 is the middle of the road, Pop. Whatever happens from here is the second half. He meant it lightly, I think, the way people make that observation at 50. But I heard something underneath the lightness that I didn't address. I heard a man who had started to think of what remained as less than what had come before, who was already in some quiet interior way doing the accounting that comes with the halfway point, looking at the things he'd done versus the things he'd wanted to do, and taking stock. I wish I'd said more directly, son, 50 is not the middle, not in the way you mean it. The middle of a life is not a chronological midpoint. It's where the most important things happen, and the most important things in your life, by which I mean the things that will matter most to you when you're 80, when the work is over and the mornings are quiet. Those things are not in the first half. They're in the years you're living now, the relationship with your children at the ages they're at, the depth of your marriage, which can always go deeper than it's gone, the friendships you've been meaning to tend, the conversations with your father that keep not quite going all the way. Those are the things that happen in the years between 50 and 70, if you're paying attention and letting them happen. Those are the things the first half was, in some ways, just preparation for. I wish I'd told him, you're not in the second half. You're in the most important part. The part where you still have the energy for the deep things, and also the perspective to know which things are deep. Don't treat it like a descent. Treat it like the arrival. I want to be specific about what I mean by the most important part, because I think it sounds vague until it's made concrete. When I was in my 50s, and which were the years from 1991 to 2001, for me, I thought the most important things in my life had already happened. The building of the business, the raising of the children, the marriage which was well established by then. 25 or 30 years in, I thought those were the defining things, the things that had set the shape, and what remained was the living out of what had been set. I was wrong. The most important things in my life happened in my 60s and 70s. My marriage deepened in its last decade in a way it hadn't in the middle decades. Helen and I learned each other differently in those years, more honestly, with less management on both sides, and what we had at the end was richer than what we'd had at 40. My children became people I actually knew, not just people I'd raised. David's particular humor, Susan's particular wisdom, the ways they developed into their own complete selves, became visible to me in my 60s in a way they hadn't when they were still in the middle of becoming. My grandchildren, my friendships, which shallowed in the busy middle years and deepened again when the busy let up. The reading I did, the thinking I finally had time for, the understanding that accumulated slowly and became, by my 70s, something I'd call a genuine grasp of what a life actually is. All of that was in the years David was looking at from 50 as the second half. The descent, the long diminishment. I should have sat across from him and said, "Son, the things you think were the important things, they were the foundation. What gets built on the foundation is happening now. Don't rush it. Don't treat the next 20 years as the slow completion of something that's already mostly done. Treat them as the part where the building actually becomes itself, where you find out what it's been all along." This is the one I was least equipped to say at the time, because it was only beginning to become visible to me. And I didn't know how to say what I was seeing without it sounding like an alarm. In 2017, when David turned 50, Helen had just been diagnosed. We knew what was coming in the broad sense, though we didn't know the timeline. And David was going through both things at once, the birthday and the diagnosis, the arrival at 50 and the beginning of losing his mother. What I saw in him, in the months that followed, was the particular way men of our formation handle the anticipatory grief of a parent's illness. We handle it by being practical. We make the arrangements. We research the options. We show up with solutions. We make ourselves useful in the ways we know how to be useful, which are the logistical ways, the provision ways, the what needs to be done ways. David was very useful in the 2.5 years between Helen's diagnosis and her death. He drove up nearly every other weekend in the last year. He handled things. He was present and capable, and everything a son can be when a mother is dying. What I wish I'd told him, what I didn't say, because I didn't know how to say it without seeming to suggest he was doing something wrong, was this: go ahead and be useful. Do the practical things, all of them. They matter. But also sit with her sometimes when there's nothing to do. Not to get anything accomplished, just to be in the room. To watch how the light comes through the window in her room at 3 in the afternoon. To hear her talk about whatever she wants to talk about, even if it's not about the illness. Even if it's about something from 40 years ago that doesn't seem to have any practical bearing on the current situation. Because she is going to be gone. And what you will want afterward is not the memory of the things you accomplished for her. You will want the memory of having been in the room with her, of having sat in the afternoon light, of having let her talk about 40 years ago without steering it back to the present. I should have told him that. I could have. I was seeing it. Watching how he managed his grief by managing the logistics, recognizing the pattern because it was my own pattern. From my mother's death, from the years when I didn't know any other way to be in a hard room than to be useful in it. I let him find his own way to it, partly. By the end, in the last weeks, he was sitting with her. He was in the room without an agenda. He was there the afternoon she died, holding her hand, being present in the way I'd finally managed to not be in the room for. So he found it without me telling him, but I should have told him anyway, earlier, before the last weeks, so he could have had more of those afternoons. The fifth thing I wish I'd told him is that the 50s are when you start to carry the dead. Not in a morbid way, in a practical way. In the way that simply describes what happens. When you're 30 or 40, most of the people you've loved are still alive. The losses have come, maybe a parent, maybe a friend. But the cohort is mostly intact. The living presence of the people who made you is mostly still available. By 50, this starts to change. The losses accelerate. Friends begin to go. Aunts and uncles who were central figures in a childhood begin to go. And the carrying begins, the accumulation of the dead in your interior, the growing weight of people who exist now only in you, in what you remember of them, in how they shaped you, in the way you hear their voice sometimes when you're doing something they would have had an opinion about. I carry my father, who died when I was 23, my mother, who followed a few years later, my brother, who went in his 60s, Helen, Bob, Frank, Harold. More now than I can easily list. The carrying is not only heavy, it's also meaningful. The people you carry became part of the person who shows up in every room, who makes decisions, who has the character he has. They're in you, not as ghosts. I'm not a ghost story kind of man, but as influence, as formation, as the specific ways they loved you or challenged you or failed you, all of which shape the specific person you are. At 50, you're at the beginning of learning to carry the dead in this way. And what I wish I'd told David is, learn to carry them as wealth, not only as loss. The dead you carry are not only what you've lost, they're also what you've been given. My father is in my hands, in the way I hold a tool, in the particular grip I developed that is probably a modified version of his grip, inherited without instruction. My mother is in the way I pay attention to people, in the specific kind of noticing she had that I thought I hadn't inherited until I got old enough to look for it. Carry them that way. Not only as absences, as presences, as the specific people who are still operating in you, still shaping things, still making their contributions to the person you're becoming. You'll be better at the carrying if you start practicing at 50, rather than waiting until you have more dead than you can hold. I want to tell you about the specific moment I understood this for myself, because I think the specific moment is always more useful than the abstract principle. It was about 10 years after my father died. I was 33. I was in the shop on a Saturday morning working on something I don't remember now. Some piece of furniture for the house, probably. And I was using a particular grip on the saw, a slightly modified grip, unconsciously developed over years of practice, that I suddenly recognized as my father's grip. I'd seen it hundreds of times without seeing it. And that morning I saw it. My hand on the saw looked like his hand on the saw. I put the tool down. I stood there for a minute and I thought, he's in my hands. He didn't go entirely. Some part of what he knew, what his body knew from years of the same kind of physical work, had transferred to me without either of us knowing it was transferring. It was in me. It would be there until I couldn't hold a tool anymore. And that's the carrying I mean. Not the grief, though the grief is part of it. The presence. The way the dead operate in you, through you, as part of the specific person you've become. At 50, David was starting to feel this with Bob, who was still alive then but beginning to slow. With his grandmother, who had already been gone for years. Starting to feel it with me, I suspect, in the particular way children feel the beginning of their parents' mortality. Not as a fact, but as a weather. What I wish I'd told him is, when it happens, when someone you've loved goes through that door and you realize they're in you now in a way they couldn't quite be when they were alive. Let them be in you. Don't manage it. Don't package it into grief that has a beginning and middle and end. Let it be the ongoing presence it actually is. Your grandfather who died before you were born is in you, through me, in ways neither of us can fully trace. That's the nature of it. It goes back further than memory. And it goes forward further than death. Carry them as wealth. That's the thing I needed someone to tell me at 33 in the shop, when I recognized my father's grip. He is wealth. What he gave me, the good parts and the hard parts, because the hard parts shaped me too, is wealth. Carry it that way. I've talked about my failures as a father in other conversations, and I don't want to rehearse all of them here. But there's a specific thing I wish I'd said to David at 50, explicitly, as a father to a son who now had his own children. I wish I'd said, I know I was not always present when you needed me to be. I know there were years when the work crowded out the asking, when I was in the room but not quite there. When you were growing up and I was growing the business and the two things were in competition, and the business often won. I know that. I'm sorry for it. And here is what I want you to know. As you raise your own children, the thing I regret most is not the specific things I missed, the games I didn't go to, the conversations I cut short, the evenings I was too tired to be fully present for. I regret those, but I can name them, which means I've made some kind of peace with them. What I regret most is harder to name. It's the general quality of my attention over those years, the low hum of distraction I carried into the room even when I was physically there. The fact that you could have your father's body in the house without having your father's mind or his heart. That's what I regret. Not the specific absences, the full absences, the games I didn't attend, but the partial absences, the years of being approximately there. You're a better father than I was, David. I've watched you with your children and I can see the ways you've corrected for what you experienced. And some of those corrections are exactly right. But I wanted to say this explicitly, while I still could. What I gave you was incomplete, and the incompleteness was not about love. The love was always there, from the first morning in that hospital corridor with you in my arms, and the snow outside the window. The love was never the question. The question was whether the love was visible enough, whether it was available enough, whether it got through the management and the provision and the work to actually land in you the way it was meant to. I hope it did. I believe it did, more than I sometimes fear. But I wish I'd said all of this at 50, when you still had years of raising left, rather than waiting until the children were mostly grown. The seventh thing, and this is the one I want to end with because it's the one I mean most, is that I am proud of you. I want to say something about what that phrase means before I use it. Because I've said it before, more in recent years than in earlier ones. And I'm not always sure I've said it in a way that landed the way it was meant to. When a man of my generation says I'm proud of you, it often comes out as a reward, as the verdict following an accomplishment. You got the promotion, I'm proud of you. You finished the project, I'm proud of you. The statement linked to the achievement so that what the child actually hears is, when you do impressive things, you have my approval. That's not what I mean. That's never what I meant, though I understand it might have sounded that way sometimes. What I mean is something unconditional, something that has nothing to do with what you've built or achieved or managed, something that is about the person you are, in a way that exists independently of what the person has done. I know I've said it, I've been saying it more, in the last several years, than I ever said it before. The Sunday calls have more of it in them now than they used to. But I wish I'd said it more specifically, more often, more plainly, for more of the years. I'm proud of the man you are. Not the engineer, not the career, the man, the specific qualities of the person you've become. The way you were present for your mother in her last years, when it was hard and you were tired and the drive was long. The way you hold yourself accountable when something goes wrong, without the particular defensiveness that men in our line have tended toward. The way you love your wife, which is openly and without embarrassment, in a way I was slower to learn. The way your children can reach you, can actually get to you when they need you. In a way that my children, including you, had to work harder for. That's what I'm proud of. Not what you built, who you are. I made you partly, you made yourself, mostly. You took what I gave you that was good and kept it, and you took what I gave you that was limited and worked past it, and you made something better than what you received. That's what children are supposed to do. It doesn't happen automatically. You did it deliberately, over years, with attention and intention. I see it, David. I should have told you sooner. I'm telling you now. I want to add one more piece because I think it belongs here, and I haven't said it in any of our Sunday calls. The thing I got wrong wasn't always what you might expect. The obvious failures, the times I was physically absent, the events I missed, the evenings I was too tired. Those I've apologized for in various ways over the years, and the apologies were genuine. But they were for the visible things, the identifiable things, the specific moments. What I haven't apologized for because I only understood it recently is the invisible thing, the quality of approval I withheld, not deliberately, but as a pattern. The way I communicated over years, something like, "This is good, but good enough isn't quite the same as right." The standard that was always slightly ahead of wherever you'd gotten to. I had that from my own father. He didn't withhold approval to be cruel. He withheld it because he'd been given a model of fatherhood where the approval was always earned, always provisional, always pending the next thing. And I passed it to you in a version I didn't know I was passing because it was simply the water I swam in. David told me something maybe 5 years ago that I haven't fully stopped thinking about. He said that growing up he never quite knew where he stood with me. Not in a dramatic way. He was clear that he knew I loved him. But in the sense of, is this enough? Is this what he wanted? Am I right, in his eyes, as I am? He didn't know. And the not knowing had cost him something. Some internal security that the child of a fully approving parent takes for granted, and the child of a conditionally approving parent has to build for themselves, slowly, out of their own conviction, without the early foundation. I'm sorry for that. I wish I'd told him at 50, "Son, you were always enough." Not in the sense of not needing to grow, but in the deeper sense, the you underneath the work and the achievements, that person, exactly as you were, was always what I wanted. I just didn't say it clearly enough, often enough, early enough to give you the ground to stand on. I'm saying it now. You were always enough. The fire's burned down to coals. The morning is almost gone. I want to say something to the person who is 50 now, and who has a father who hasn't said these things. Your father may not say these things. Men of a certain generation and certain formation don't always have the language for what I've been putting into words here. They may have the feelings. Most fathers of most formations have more of the feelings than they manage to express. But the words don't always come. If you're waiting for them, I'd say this: stop waiting for exactly these words. Watch instead for the version of these words your father has available. The work looks good. I'm glad you came. How are the kids? I was thinking about you. These are the phrases that sometimes carry, in a compressed and imperfect form, what I've been saying here at length. They're not the same. I know they're not the same. But they may be what's available. And available love is worth receiving even when it's less than what you needed. And if your father is gone, if these conversations are no longer possible, I'd say what I've come to believe over the long years of missing my own father. He probably had more to say than he said. The silence was not the measure of the feeling. The generation, the formation, the code, those are real, and they cost people the words even when they have the feelings. He likely had the feelings. He likely didn't have the words. And the things you needed to hear from him, the approval, the pride, the "you were always enough," you can give those to yourself. Not as a substitute for the real thing. You deserved the real thing. But as a beginning, as the ground you start building from, in the years you still have ahead. Say the things you needed to hear from him, to yourself. You know what they are. You've been waiting for them long enough to know. Say them to yourself, and then say them to the people in your own life who are still here and waiting. If anything I said today reached you, you can subscribe to walk with me a while longer. I read every comment. Tell me what you wish your father had said to you, or what you wish you'd said to him. I'd like to know. Take care of yourself. Call your son. Say the proud thing. Say it plainly. Say it in a way that makes clear it has nothing to do with what he just accomplished. Say it the way you'd say "I love you," because that's what it is, in different words. And if you're the son, not the father, if you're 50 and you never heard these things, and you're not sure you ever will, I want you to know something. The pride was almost certainly there. Behind whatever code your father lived inside, whatever silence or provision stood in for the words, the pride was there. It usually is. It just doesn't always find its way out. You deserve to hear it plainly. I'm sorry if you didn't. The fire's still going. I'll see you next time.